Well, welcome to another episode of Ask Forza. You've heard about her, but you haven't seen her. This is my elusive wife. If you're at a sale or at a racetrack, you might see her, but you've rarely seen her behind the camera. So today, we are actually going to talk about how to assess horses in the paddock. Okay, so you're at the racetrack. You've forgot your program. You're not stranded, actually. And even if you have your program, this is a great video. So looking at horses in the paddock, as a lot of people tend to do, and I am amazed by people online who pick horses and pick winners without even looking at them. So kudos to you guys if you're one of those. But picking horses in the paddock is one of the most interesting things that I like to do. And my wife, if you can correct me, likes to do in the paddock to see how a horse is actually going into a race. So, Dominique, what are some of the things that you kind of look for when you're looking for horses in the paddock?
Well, I personally think that while the program is obviously very important, as there's a lot of gamblers who never even look at the horses, but you do have to take into account that they are individual athletes. And as such, there are certain ones that are peaking, there's certain ones that are maybe not going into a race so well. So it's looking at the individual athlete to get an idea of how you think they're going in. I personally find looking at them extremely helpful. What I like to do is, you know, if there's, say, 10 horses in the race, the nice thing is they're all walking in front of you. So you have a basis of a group to say, well, maybe this one's a little bit overtrained. It looks like it's not carrying a lot of weight. Another one might look like its coat is really dappled out, looks like it's really healthy. But then you might have another who looks like it's overconditioned. So it's carrying a little bit too much weight, which means it might not be fit for that particular race. Maybe it's had some niggling issues and they haven't been able to train on it the way that they would have liked to. So it's just kind of looking at each horse to get an idea of how they're going in.
Well, and she made a great point. So what's interesting is once you hit the stakes and graded stakes levels where you're seeing these horses running in races, you tend to have a baseline of when that horse is good. And I hate to drop a bomb here, but we're going to go into actually a specific race that was very interesting. So thank God she's back in a great way this year. But last year, Secret Oath had kind of tailed off after a phenomenal performance in the Kentucky Oaks. And then she ran well in the Preakness. But then as she got into the summer, you could start seeing differences in her that's in terms of going the wrong way. So when we'd seen her previously, she was very well built out physically in terms of condition. Her coat looked good. She was moving very well as she moved through the paddock and in warm-ups. And so that's a big indicator of when you're going into a race, sometimes if you have an overwhelming favorite and his coat might not be looking as good, or he might look a little stiff in different places, that's sometimes where you look for a horse that's going to actually beat him on the day. And it happened in that race, right? If you were to tell me, and in her own right, Nest is a phenomenal filly and obviously was the best last year. But on a talent level at that point of the season, I had always felt that Secret Oath was a step above, and she was kind of going in the wrong direction and needed a break and was not getting a break. And now she's received the break and she's back. But it was interesting in that race was the first time we were like, wow, Nest looks flawless. You can't take anything away from this filly. And then Secret Oath was kind of going in the wrong direction. So those are some things that I'll look at specifically of, is this horse staying in terms of where it needs to be and where it's always been? Is it better or is it worse? When you're dealing in claiming races, it's a little bit different because claimers, it's which horse is not necessarily better on the day. Sometimes a claimer will run, when it's in a 20, it'll run great. You put it in a 30, it runs terrible. A lot of mental toughness comes in the claiming ranks because some horses that are capable might not step up when they're moved up. Some will, and you have to look at the form to understand that. So when you're looking at horses and assessing them in the paddock, it's useful from all angles in terms of understanding how they're going into that race. And then once you add in the PPs, you can kind of perfect the process of what is this horse really showing me today and how do I think it's going to perform.
The other thing you can look at is kind of their demeanor. I personally like a horse who's super relaxed. A lot of the really graded stakes horses, they walk in, they have a presence. You feel like you're looking at Michael Jordan. They're very calm, they're very collected. There's some that get a little bit on their toes, and I definitely like those. But the ones that wash out, they look anxious. They just look like they're losing their minds, running their race before they even hit the track, is definitely, to me, an indicator that I wouldn't bet them in that particular race.
And again, it does come down to individual horses. So, let's say as you follow horses along, you might have a horse that always gets anxious in the paddock, and that's just what that horse does, but he always walks out and performs. And it's strange because I've seen it a couple times in certain scenarios where I've seen horses washing out, getting upset, getting really anxious in the paddock, and then walking onto the racetrack, calming down, cooling out, and running a good race. So as we started this video with, there's no clear-cut thing. To me, PPs are the biggest way to go in your handicapping races to understand that horse a little better. But it's also at the top, and this is the top of the game, understanding what that horse does every single time, and you're trying to look for if they're acting differently from what they normally show.